Hello, and welcome to the Marble Security Podcast for February 18th, 2014. My name's Dave Jevons, and I am the host of the program. Today, we're going to be discussing the results of the Marble Security Mobile App Threat Report, where we look at data risks, privacy risks, and other security risks that can affect enterprises and consumers alike. What we did for the Mobile App Threat Report was we analyzed a random sampling of 50,000 apps that are available on the Google Play Marketplace. We looked at apps in 28 different categories, including business, education, entertainment, finance, health and fitness, medical, music, productivity, shopping. We looked at social networking apps, sports apps, transportation apps, travel, and weather apps as well. I'd like to briefly discuss our methodology for the Mobile App Threat Report. When we analyze an app, we look at a number of different characteristics. First, we look at the permissions that the app is asking for. Then we do some static analysis, which lets us know what an app's actually doing. And then we run the apps in an instrumented environment where we actually do dynamic behavioral monitoring of the app, and we're able to learn a lot of things about its behavior which are not really apparent through more static means. We run the apps and we also look at where they're communicating over the internet, and we correlate that with Marble Security's Network Threat Database, which contains years of data of hostile IPs on the internet. So we look to see if apps are communicating to, for example, sites that may have run botnet command and control centers or hosted malicious websites, phishing sites, or malicious app servers. And we're able to detect those and then flag those as highly risky apps. Here's a summary of the findings. About 30% of apps expose companies, employees, and consumers to potential privacy and data risks, and may expose companies to the potential for mobile devices to be used in advanced persistent threats as ways to attack companies or to gain critical information about the infrastructure, including passwords and other credentials. Let's dive into the results. Fully 30% of the apps that we analyzed access a user's Google accounts. This means that those apps can gain access to Google Docs if the user's got a Google Docs account or the company's using Google Docs, and those apps can read those documents and either modify them or, more disturbingly, send them off the device through, for example, an SSL connection or email or other means. 17% of apps that we analyzed read the IMEI information and send it off the device, and a percentage of those, a couple percent of those, also send the SIM card information off the device. Now, advertising networks might claim that this is used for tracking of devices for better positioning of ads, but the fact is, if IMEI and SIM card information are being sent off the device, that creates a risk of device cloning. Certainly in China and in India, it's possible to buy devices where you can program IMEI and you can effectively program SIM card attributes. Let's take a look at some of the privacy risks that can expose companies and their employees to some real dangers here. 9% of the apps that we investigated read your contact database. Now, I think any IT security person is going to agree with me that having a copy of your company's Active Directory information stored somewhere on the internet where you don't control it, you don't know what the access controls are, you have no control over encryption or who accesses it, that's a pretty bad idea. And this is what apps are exposing companies to. So if a user's device is connected to the corporate directory through ActiveSync, connected to Active Directory, it's possible for these apps to mine the contact database and send that off the phone. Now, there are legitimate apps that do this, things like Viber and Skype, and a number of different games want to mine your contact database so they can spam your friends with ads to join their networks and join their games or join their phone call systems. But there's also apps that do it for potentially malicious purposes as well. Even legitimate apps, though, pose a risk to the enterprise because now effectively your corporate database with the names, email addresses, in some cases phone numbers and titles are sitting out on a third-party server over which you have no control or visibility to. So you might want to restrict the types of apps or the behaviors of apps that your employees are allowed to have on their mobile devices if they're going to be connected into the corporate directory. Disturbingly, a full 12% of apps read your SMS messages. Now, this is of concern not just for privacy reasons, particularly for consumers, but on the enterprise, the real concern here is that that information can be used to create a social graph of who your employees are communicating with. This allows potential attackers to start mapping out the social infrastructure of the company and know who targeted employees trust. So if they can send SMS messages either spoofing the phone numbers of other employees or using employees' names in those SMS messages, whatever they send is much more likely to be trusted by the recipient. In fact, disturbingly, 9% of apps read your phone call history. This is further building out the social graph, which allows an attacker who's launching an APT to get into your company. It gives them information that they need. 3% of apps modify device Wi-Fi settings. This is a real concern because it can mean that employees have Wi-Fi turned on when they don't think it's turned on. They can change which Wi-Fi you're connected to, potentially opening the doorway for evil twin attacks where the employees are connected to hostile Wi-Fis or open Wi-Fis that they didn't expect. Believe it or not, 1.6% of apps are trying to install other apps or malware silently onto a user's device. Now, this attack really depends on the version of Android that your employees are using. Newer versions of Android, this is not possible to do, yet apps are still trying to do it. But if you have employees on older versions of Android, it is possible for these apps to silently install other apps onto that user's device. So you really want to make sure that when employees are coming in a BYOD type program, that they're running the latest versions of the Android operating system. The same really holds true for iOS. And finally, and to my mind, perhaps the most disturbing, is that 6% of these Android apps that we surveyed, and remember, it was a random sampling of 50,000 apps from Google Play, fully 6% of these apps read the web browser history. And about half of them send that we can track off the device. Now, this is really disturbing, and not just for privacy reasons, but it really enables attackers to gain a good profile about the user and to start profiling the corporate network. So for example, they know which websites you go to. They know what you're interested in. By looking at your browser history, they may know which web email systems the employee uses. They're going to know where they bank. And if you're running, for example, internal websites that they're accessing, perhaps over the VPN, maybe you've got sharepoint.mycompany.com, that information is going to be in the user's browser history, which is now being sent off the device. So the results of the Marble Security mobile app threat report really highlight that companies need to be scanning the apps that are on users' devices, mapping their behavior to the types of risks that a company is willing to accept, and then you need to be able to take action on it and lock down access to the corporate networks and to corporate information if employees have apps that violate your security policies or put you at risk. If you'd like to learn more, visit us at marblesecurity.com, where you can download a free copy of the Marble Security Mobile App Threat Report. Well, that's it for this week's Marble Security Podcast. I look forward to speaking to you next time when we will discuss the latest goings-on in mobile security.